Hey guys, welcome back to the Best of If Gathering. We are remembering some of our favorite moments, some of your favorite moments, and this week we're going to talk about the very, very beginning of If Gathering. In fact, when we launched If Gathering, it was just a few of us, and it was Lindsay Nobles, Jessica Taylor, Amy Bay, and it was a wing and a prayer. And so I just want to start by just telling you what a God thing If Gathering is. So years before, I had woken up in the night and the words disciple a generation had glued to my heart, and I could not shake it. And I knew over time that this was going to be something that I was supposed to do to obey God. But I mean, I had a bunch of kids at home. I did not know how on earth God would actually help me or anybody disciple a generation. So I tucked it away and didn't think much about it. Fast forward years later, God begins to open relationships and doors, and I am all of a sudden feeling like maybe this was from him. Maybe this was something that I was supposed to pursue. And I knew in my publishing career that would be limited, that I would only reach a certain number of people. And so I dreamed about building a space that brought together all of us, that brought together you using your gifts, and some of my friends that were also teachers using their gifts. And so we brought together a one big happy family. But to reach a generation, we knew we couldn't put a high ticket price on everything. So we started If Gathering with pay what you can. It was the scariest thing in the world. We had no big donors behind us. We literally just prayed. And we needed hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay our vendors to do all these things, and you all delivered. Our average donation that year was $25 a piece. Now, how that happened wasn't the, few people in the room, because that year I think there were about 1,500 people in the room. It was all of you in your places donating and bringing your friends together. And that first year we had how many events, Amy Bay? We had over 1,500 events, I think.
Honestly, I can't even remember. We had a donation page. We didn't even have a registration system live. It was the most organic, least organized, least thought to put together. Even the next year, we started putting out resources for hosting If Local, and we looked back on what we had done in 2014, and we were like, oh my gosh, we didn't do anything. People were just in it for this vision of taking ownership for their people and their place and their community, and gathering and coming together across generations, across denominations, and across cultures.
I mean, it was a crazy dream, and I just want to honor Amy because I remember specifically being in our little bitty office that was very little bitty and saying, what if we just put this out there for everybody? And she was like, oh, okay, we could call it If Local. And all of a sudden, the next thing I knew, If Locals were popping up everywhere. We were sitting at our computers, designing logos for each If Local, and then there turned out to be over 1,500. So we were designing logos as a full-time job, but yet had no idea if this was going to work, if this was going to, our technology. And we'd never hosted an event before, y'all, and we were putting it out to the whole wide world. And it was just terrifying. I have never been more scared than that first If Gathering, and yet God completely showed up. All of you showed up, and it worked. And If Local was born on a wing and a prayer, and God delivered through all of you in your neighborhoods, in your offices, on your campuses, in your churches. And it just still is it's all of our very, very favorite parts of If Gathering. It's you. When people ask me, what's the secret of If? How did it spread to the ends of the earth? I'm like, a bunch of obedient women said, I'll host. I'll have people, strangers in my home. I'll bring together people in my church, even though I don't have a role or a paid position. I will say yes. And all of you said yes. And it's one of our favorite parts. And honoring you and bringing you into our event is one of our favorite parts too. So here's a few moments that we got to taste the beauty and magic of If Local in the big gathering. You guys out there are just blowing up the internet, representing all of the many people sitting in front of those 40,000 streams.
That's
so
right.
It's just reaching out into the world.
So we're going to
Incredible.
say probably 2.8 million. It's fine.
Yeah, we can round up.
I'm just doing the math in my head.
Yep.
I'm a writer, so clearly I should do a lot of math in my head. 2.8.
Kick the dust off your back, don't look back. Give all the dollars you know a fake heart attack. 'Cause you were made for this. You can feel it inside your bones. You were made for this, and it's time you let the world know who you are, what you know. It's happening.
love our If Locals. And another memory that this actually brings up for me is when Jill Briscoe joined us for the first time in 2017. And she was a little bit of a last minute add. And so our team didn't get to brief her fully. And she was unaware that she was being simulcasted to so many women, so many If Locals all over the world. And but we're so glad that it did. She ended up essentially breaking the internet that day with her message and just blowing us away with her wisdom. And Jenny, I know that y'all had kind of known each other beforehand, but tell us about how you got Jill involved with If Gathering.
Okay, well, first of all, yes, you're right. She didn't know the whole time she was up there that there were thousands of events watching. She thought, she tells a story that she thought she was speaking to some college kids in the room. She had no idea what If was. And my favorite story, well, so I met Jill randomly. We were both speaking at a prison together. I didn't even get to hear her speak. We drove to the prison together, and then we went to two different units. And so I never heard her speak. I just sat next to her in a car, and I was so ministered to by her. And I knew that our women were craving heroes. They were craving people ahead of us that were finishing well. And it was a huge risk. I'll tell you, I was a nervous wreck. And I was like, what are our people going to think? And I didn't even know for sure she could speak. I knew she'd had this very long ministry and people loved her, but I didn't know what I was doing. And so I was so nervous. I was like, okay, Lord, I am trusting you. So we get her up there and we're already over. And she didn't know that thousands of events were happening. And so I'm sitting backstage with Angie Smith, and we hear her say something about when she was in England with C.S. Lewis. And Angie and I grab each other and we're like, what did she just say? And so the two of us, completely, we leave whatever we were talking about and we are all in and going, what is happening out there? And so we sat on the stairs behind the stage as she finished. And I mean, it was so over, y'all. And we had lunch for thousands of events happening around the world. I mean, it was so stressful. But I knew it was rich and I knew it was good. And then, y'all, it was a standing ovation. And I cried because I was like, Lord, I just want to be so clear that who leads this ship is not me, it isn't Brooke, it isn't Amy, it is God. He has literally led us every step of the way. And there are so many moments like this that I cannot believe happen, that there's no other explanation apart from God's will. And so anyway, Jill is one of my favorite stories and pictures of it. And now she's mentored us all, loved us all. And gosh, she did. She broke the internet, sold out of all her books. A new generation found Jill Briscoe. So enjoy.
And what we've got to do is go where we're sent, stay where we're put, unpack, as if you're never going to leave, and give what you've got. And he might move you on, and you say it again. Maybe circumstances will move you on. But until you are moved on to whatever, you give everything you have between your own 2 feet, whether you're in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, or the uttermost parts of the world. And I'm privileged to have been taught that in the first year of my conversion. So if the mission feels between my own 2 feet, you're talking about calling, Jill. I was in a seminary in Ukraine about a month ago. And one of the students asked me, Miss Briscoe, where did you get your call to mission work? Where did you get your call to ministry? And I said, I got saved. Okay? I am not one who's had the clouds part and I call you to go to Africa. No, all of us, if you are saved, that's your calling. What is the calling? Matthew 28. Go into all the world and make disciples and teach them to make disciples and teach them to make disciples. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Between our own 2 feet now. Don't worry about Judea and Samaria, guys. Where are you now? You start in Jerusalem. And so my story is very simple. I've gone where I was sent. I've stayed where I was put until he said, move on. And it has led me, literally, around the world. And it's not a glamour trip. Well, you know that because he said, take your cross with you. You're going to need it. You're going to have to die to yourself. You're going to have to die to your choices, whether I get married, whether I don't. You're going to have to die to your prejudiced little mind. You're going to have to die to what you'd like to do, whether you're going to be single or married. Really? Really? Read 2 Corinthians 7 or 1 Corinthians 7, where Paul says, because of the present crisis, those that are married should live as those that are not. Have you ever heard a preach on that? Well, you will if you've been around me. And those that are single have the advantage. He was talking about the persecution of being thrown to the lions at that point that was coming from Rome to Corinth to the new Christians. And he said, this time of crisis, if you're single, you have the advantage because you won't see your children chewed up or you won't see them beheaded. And if you're single, you can attend upon the Lord with devotion and tell them about me. So I happened to be single at that point, ended up in the back end of Liverpool teaching. Around the corner, the Beatles were playing. They were 17. Nobody knew they were the Beatles. I didn't, but their friends were in my classroom. And they were the best thing going because the drugs and everything were not in the cavern. And I'm highborn, small Downton Abbey, small, very small. Those of you know what I'm talking about. Only God can take a snob like me and put me in a classroom in the red light district of Liverpool and break my heart for my kids. And the headmaster would say to all of us that tried to resign every week, no, you cannot resign. Because I'm English, I didn't. I thought, why wasn't I American? What do you mean I can't resign? What? I'm resigned. No, I was taught to respect authority and do what I was told. And so all of us teachers were trying to resign, but it wasn't working. No, we've got to find something. I remember my atheist headmaster in that place. We've got to find something. He was nearly in tears. We've got to have we need a community center. There wasn't a community center of any sort. We need an alternate instead of the drug places. But if any of you teachers find something that transforms, I will give you anything you ask me. And my ears were attuned. And I went home and I got on my knees and I knew what transformed, only Jesus. And I got back on the bus. I didn't tell my parents where I was going. And I went down and I found, or began to find my kids. And I began to hang out. First, they were suspicious. What you here for, miss? You come to tell people where we are? No. Just want to see what you do. I'm paying for coffee. Anybody want one? That's the way in. And that's the way to look for me. Are you coming tomorrow night, miss? Yes. I'll buy you coffee tomorrow night. I think it took 3 months, 3 times a night, 2 in the morning. And Trevor, the leader of the gang in my classroom, looked over his shoulder and said, are you coming tomorrow night, miss? And I said, thank you, Lord. I came. His face was all bashed up. He'd been in a fight. I said, who did that to your face? He said, my dad. I heard myself say, could I come and talk to your dad? And I prayed, let him say no. He said, you'd come and talk to me, Dad? I said, come on. Well, both of us got thrown out, which didn't matter because Trevor looked at me, tough kid, chains on his back, broken bottles in his pockets he puts in people's face. And he said, nobody's ever come to talk to me, Dad, miss. Nobody ever tried to do that. And Trevor began and became the first convert. And there was a little miracle happened. And the headmaster came to me and he said, Jill, what do you want? I said, what do you mean? He said, Trevor, transformation. So I said, I want a Bible for every boy in the school. Now, I'm a new believer. I didn't know there was Bible societies, and I didn't know where to get it, but there was a Roman Catholic priest, the youth pastor out there in the streets, and a Salvation Army lady. We were the only ones out there, I assure you, 3 of us. And my Roman Catholic friend, this young man, said, I know where, and my church down in the slums will pay for 800 Bibles for these kids. And that's what happened. And God began a work, not least in this teacher's heart. Mission fields between your own 2 feet, calling. We're all called. Community. God gave me a community where they taught me how to pray. Taught me to have the conversation on the steps of my soul in the deep place where nobody goes, right? And that's the key to a life for serving Jesus. It's the key. To sit on the steps of your soul and let him come and sit down there with you and have the conversation. But this is the problem. I ran to the deep place where nobody goes and I found him waiting there. Where have you been? He asked me. Well, I've been in the shallow place where everyone lives, I replied, and I knew he knew. He just wanted me to admit I'd been too busy being busy. I'm running out, I began. Of course, he said. I haven't seen you in a while. And he sat down on the steps of my soul and smiled at me. An angel sang, and a shaft of light brightened my darkness, and I smiled back. I'm such a fool. Shh, he said, putting his finger on my lips. And he touched my hurried heart and startled it, skidded to a near stop. My spirit nestled into nearness in the deep place where nobody goes. And my soul spoke then, and he answered with words beyond music. Where on earth had I been while heaven waited? Such grace. I was in closed country not long ago, 2 years ago. In hiding, 5 days, windows blacked out, teaching the New Testament. 35 leaders' wives who'd come at great cost. For example, we prayed that their children would still be there when they went home if the religious police found out. And for 5 days, we were learning the Bible. One of those young pastors' wives from the worst part in that country came to me during the afternoon when we would pray and worship, but always in whispers somebody might hear. They could never sing a hymn out loud, of course. And she came to me and she said something to my interpreter. My interpreter said, would you pray that her children be there? And I said, oh my word, yes, of course. And then she said something else, and the interpreter said, she wants to hear you pray. I said, why? She said, then she'll know how well you know God. Now think about that. If that was you, and you bowed your head to pray, why would your prayer tell her? Well, a Greek philosopher in my philosophy class at Cambridge, I still remember, speak that I may see thee, not hear thee. Because what comes out of our mouth tells the person next to you who we are. Think back to your last conversation. Was it I, me, my, mine? Huh? Your word betrayeth you, says a Shakespeare character. And I realized if she was listening to how I was talking to God, she would know about my relationship with him. And I remember one of the hardest things I've ever done was to try and block all that out. Sit on the steps of my soul, you know, wherever you are, and block everything out and simply have the conversations I had learned to have in the deep place where nobody goes. I didn't hardly dare open my eyes. What had that told her about my relationship with God? And she just went, and I said, what's that? She said, That's what she wants. Now, I want to tell you something. At the end of your life, if God graces you with enough time to serve him forever, it seems, what will happen was people will judge your life by how well you knew God. I served World Relief for 20 years and traveled worldwide for them. I've been to the killing fields of Cambodia. I've stood there with the glass monument with 3,000 skulls in it and talked to my interpreter whose whole family was in there. I've been to the worst places on earth for World Relief. And all they want to know is, how do I get to know this God? Help me in prayer. Prayer and this. Prayer and this. And in your Jerusalem or Judea or Samaria or to the utmost prayer, I don't know where you are, but go on knowing it, learning it. Please memorize it, because once you get after a certain age, that's done. My glasses come in handy, my hearing aid is fine, my false teeth are just dandy, but I sure do miss my mind. Go learn. I think my time is up. Where should I end, Lord? I think I'd like to tell you that you're looking at a woman who's a very fearful person. I've always been frightened. Maybe it's being bombed every night, and that was it. So how does somebody like me get himself in danger and difficulties? Scared. I've gone scared. I've stayed scared. Well, doesn't God give you peace in those moments? No, he gives you courage. Well, what is courage? Isn't it peace? I remember standing outside a very wild dance hall when I was learning these lessons. And incidentally, my first child didn't speak till he was about 2. I'm an educator. I should have worried me, but it didn't. And one day he spoke. I put him in the pram and rushed up the youth. By then we were in youth work, reaching street kids and stuff in a mission. And I rushed up to where my husband was in the office with 3 ladies that weren't married. And I rushed in with David and I said, he spoke, because everybody knew he didn't speak. I had not noticed, actually. And Stuart, he's a bank inspector. He always asks the obvious question, what did he say? And I said, he said, oh dear. Where had he heard that? We lived at the gatehouse of this castle, this mission. He only had me. Mr. Oh dear. Always fearful. And I stood outside this place and I could not for the life of me get the courage to go inside. I got everybody else doing it. I'm very bossy. I took Bible students down. You go over there, go in the pub, go. I'll pray. Nice of me. And I was left outside the floral hall, 1,000 kids in there, Beatles era, screaming, bashing their heads on the concrete, trying to touch their gods, right? I didn't have it. I prayed, I went home. I had to go back next night, because if you're beaten, you go back till you get it. And on my own, I stood there, which was even worse than it had been, and I started to pray for the courage. And suddenly, sitting on the steps of my soul, in the deep place where nobody goes, and you can anywhere in the world, having the conversation, God said to me, Jill, will you go in without the courage for me? I can do that. You mean, will I go in frightened out of my mind? Yes, I will. And I left my emotions outside, and I took Will by the hand and somehow got myself in. And listen to me. After obedience, the courage was waiting for me. Okay? Okay. I knew what to say. Big bouncer there. Who are you? You from the, I just want to see, I'm a teacher in the area, I wanted to see what was happening to my class kids. And then I heard take me to the manager. I said, Lord, why do I want to go to the manager? Seemed the thing to say. Well, all right, come on. So I found Alan in this grubby little office, 1,000 kids, music. I'm screaming at him. He said, who are you and what do you want? I said, what happens when this din stops on the platform? And I could know where this was going, and I was thinking, oh, Lord, help me. And what do you mean, what happens? I said, what happens on the platform? Will you give it me just for 10 minutes? What do you want it for? I thought I'd make sure he wouldn't give it me. I said, I want to tell them there's a God that's real, a Bible that's true, and a way off drugs. He said, no, I won't. I said, can I go home? No, not yet. Not until, Miss Briscoe, you've explained that to me. I run this place. I could never go to church. I've waited all my life for someone to explain that. If you can explain that to me, you can have my platform. It took about 8 weeks. Alan came to Christ, and he gave our Bible school that platform. So you go where you're sent, and you stay where you're put, and you give what you've got until you're done. One last story, or one last poem. Fast forward all these years to India 3 years ago. One of the hardest trips I've ever taken. Orissa was on fire, Hindus killing Muslims. And of course, the Christians got in the way too. Pastor and his wife and their 9-year-old boy on their knees, being told to recant. Try that. We were in the Bible school, 800 gorgeous young 18 to 22-year-old women and men, but the women are the evangelists. They won't kill them first. If it's the men that go into those extreme villages with the gospel, they'll kill them like that. The women have a chance. Stuart and I have trained in that particular place for 10 years, every other year. And now there's 800 of them. Their parents are in Orissa. They don't know whether they're dead or alive or have run into the forest and are safe. Police were brought to keep us safe, and I have had it. I'm done. I knew I was done, but I sort of didn't want God to know. Stuart finishes, well, what they did is they just cancelled everything, and Stuart and I did a Bible school for them for 7 days while we're in this situation. But this was the last, and tomorrow I was going home to the kids and home to my grandkids and home to a free land. And I was done. I mean, done. I wouldn't be back to India, and maybe we wouldn't go to some of the other places on our schedule. And Stuart's giving this beautiful thing of taking up your cross. Yeah, Lord, look, it's their turn. I've had my share, Lord. I think I've done pretty well. Keep going like this. I bowed my head. I don't get visions, but I get pictures sometimes in my mind. And here it was, and the Lord was there on the steps of my soul, and we began the conversation. Jill, what do you see? I see a wall and a cross against it. Is that your cross? Yes. I'm done. I see that. Jill, who do you expect to carry it home for you? All the way home, Jill. All the way home. All the way home, Jill. All the way home. Shaken, drained, discouraged, sickly, tired and troubled and depressed. Glad the time of serving over. Now I go home and rest. Hot and humid was the weather. Sad and needy was my crowd. Feeling I had done my duty, earned the time allowed, of rest allowed. Soon I could return to family. Yes, tomorrow I'd be gone. Sitting in the last hot meeting I tuned in to what went on. Listened to my husband's preaching. It was a great last talk. All about the call of Jesus. All about our life's faith walk. Stuart opened up the scriptures, talked of Jesus' pain and loss. How he who was our great sin bearer bore our guilt upon his cross. What a great word for the students. Hope they'd listened, yield their hearts. They were young, their lives before him. Now their turn to do their part. Time for prayers of dedication. I was tired, so late at night. Shut my eyes and wished it over when a picture sprang to sight. Saw a cross alone, discarded, lain at rest against a wall. Who'd lain down such holy symbol? Who'd abandoned life's faith call? Then a voice so dear, familiar, asked a question, pierced me through. Who is that you're expecting, carrying it home for you? How could I lay down that crossbeam? How to think that no one saw? Who did I expect to lift it, carry it to heaven's door? Jesus, Jesus, please forgive me. Carried thou your cross for me, all the way to hell to save me. Help me carry mine for thee. I no hero, special woman, just a lady, old and gray. But my Lord, join me, but my Lord, I will carry. Home, Lord, all the way. Spoke his voice so quiet but clearly then. All the way home, Jill. All the way home. All the way home. Don't put it down. Pray with me. You said it, Lord. You said it to Peter. You said it to the first 12. And down the centuries, you have said it to every simple, single, normal, ordinary person like me. All the way home. Take up your cross and die on it, Jill. Die to your hopes and your dreams. Die to your ambitions. Die to everything else but to me. And Lord, I know, though I know not one woman except a few in this place, that there will be times in their life when they will put that cross down. And if there's one thing you brought me here to say, it's this. All the way home. All the way home. All the way home. Hear us, Lord. Hear us. Amen.
Jill Briscoe has been such a precious gift in our community. We are so grateful she finally said yes, because what she has brought to us is not just on stage. She has been mentoring and pastoring all of us backstage too. She sets up a little corner chair, and the entire time during all of the events she's been to, If Lead and If Gathering, she is meeting one-on-one with leaders. And at one time I came off the stage and she had all the band guys at her feet, you know? So she is just a disciple maker. She is a lover of Jesus. And more than anything to all of us right now, she is a hero of how to finish well. God, we pray that our lives would be spent half as well as Jill Briscoe's. So now, we have other things to tell you, because some of you just heard about If Local for the first time, and we don't want you to miss it. If Local is such a special group of people, and you can sign up to be a part of that community. All it means is that you're going to take our tools and resources, or any tools and resources, and lead for the good of people around you. So don't miss that. You get to go sign up at ifgathering.com, or we'll have links below and you can find out more about it. But I'm telling you, it is an awesome group to run with. We are called to live on mission, and we need those sisters that are running arm in arm with us. So yeah, come on and be a part of that. If you don't know, we love building tools for you. And one of those tools is If Equip. And our latest study, I'm telling you, you are going to love it. It is called The Good Gospel. And I don't know if I've ever been more passionate about anything I've built. And the reason why is because this is the simple message of Jesus, who he is, what he did for us, and what it means to follow him. So guys, go get that study. Sign up, invite friends, host a virtual study, grab people around you, and let's do it together, because understanding who Jesus is and what he's done for us is the most life-changing and most defining thing about us. So come on, be brave, gather your people, and let's see what God does with just this little tool and you being obedient and brave. We're about to tell you the greatest story that has ever been told. So I'm here with my great friends, Jamie and Jackie, and I'm so excited y'all are here with me. And we're gonna talk about what the gospel means to us in the most beautiful setting.
My hesitation with trusting God with salvation was probably shame for me. I knew how wrong I had messed up. I knew all the things. And I didn't trust that God actually was enough for me.
For me, I guess I didn't know that it had implications for my own individual life. It was like, oh yeah, Jesus died, therefore I can do whatever I want. Not the alternative of, no, Jesus died, therefore empower me to live like he lived.
Nobody wants suffering, nobody wants difficulty, nobody wants guilt and shame. And yet those are the very things that almost every one of us that loves God brought us to God, right?
We can't be passive about putting sin to death.
That's right.
You know, Jesus did the work, but we still got some work to do.
Before our faith in his son, there was a disconnect between us and him. We are sinful people, and he is a holy God. We believe that God's son accomplished for us what we never could accomplish.
The gospel has opened up the door for lovers of sin to be transformed into lovers of God. And out of that love, you are then empowered to love all of the people that God has made.
So with this incredible hope that we have, with this insane freedom that he's bought for us, how are we gonna live with it? To believe and trust Jesus as a hope for your life, it's just the beginning of a story where sin and death is ultimately gonna be completely defeated. So here we go.